This is a video of sawing a decent sized cherry log. It's a little over 8 foot long and I'd say about 22 inches in diameter. It also has a major defect, as you can see. This would be unsaleable in my area. The mills will not take something with this kind of a defect, but I can salvage somewhere between 50 and 75% of this wood, and this is a butt log, so it's all going to be, anything I can salvage is going to be high grade lumber. Cutting a log like this takes extra time and effort, and if it were a piece of beech I wouldn't bother, it'd be firewood, but it's cherry, so it's worth the time and effort. When I rolled this log up to the lifting arms, the larger butt size actually tipped the log to the point where it did not come in exactly where I wanted it. So now I end up having to move it forward a little bit so that it is in the sweet spot of cutting this. I can do this with the return on the mill itself, but typically if it will move relatively easily, it only takes me a minute or so to do it physically, and it's not too big of a deal. You lift the toe boards up a little bit and use those as rollers, and she'll move right along. The mill is a Cook's 3238 full hydraulic, and it works pretty well. There's always a couple of things that you would like a little different, but there's a lot of stuff on this that I really like. It will cut a log up to 21.5 foot long, and by the specs 32 inch in diameter, but that's not really the way it works. Anything over about 28 inches in diameter starts to be a real issue. You might be able to do it if the log is really straight, but if you've got flares or any type of stud sticking out or whatever, it can be a real trick to make it happen. I'm rolling the log just to get a good overview of the whole thing. I usually do that when it's on the ground that I'm rolling it in, but with the major defect there, I just wanted to see what else might be an issue, and I ended up putting it with that defect up. I often saw the worst face first. Here I idled the saw down a bit and engaged the blade. Then speed it back up. One of the things I really like about this is the remote control. There's a box that has all of the controls for any function of the head, and it's on a long cable. So I can go to the end of the mill, control it from there. I can actually go up to the side of the log. I can go to the other side, control the head from almost anywhere up to about the middle of the saw itself. One of the other nice features of this saw is its board return. It has a very powerful board return. It's hydraulic, and it will push a log. It'll, you'll see at the end of this cut, this is a pretty heavy slab. It'll take this slab right off of this log without any issues. With that first cut, I took most of the defects out, but you can see that it's still stained wood underneath that. So I will work around that and, get as much good wood out of it as I can. I don't have an edger yet, so I edge all of the lumber I cut with the sawmill itself. So I drop it down onto the lifting arms to make it easier to put back up on the mill when I go to edge it at the end of the cutting the log. Typically with a log this size, I would get at least 4 pieces of lumber that I would need to edge, maybe more, but because of the defect and the staining and that, I'm only going to get 2, and neither one of those are real good boards. I'll keep those for my own use. They'll still give me some board foot that is good quality lumber. It's going to be clear, just not an 8-foot long board. I'm going to manually get the slab off of this because it came down to a very narrow end, and I don't trust the return fingers to grab that. That may end up pulling a blade off. I could have just cut the second board, but I wasn't sure if I was going to bring this back or not, but I do end up using this and using the board return to bring that board back. I could have just cut that second one and brought both of them back at the same time. I'm going to take a look at this board to see if there's any defects and what the log is looking like at this point to decide whether I should turn it or not. I decided to take another piece of 4/4 off of it. You can see some of the stains showing up in the corner. That's why I flip this, is to keep the grade good. As soon as you start seeing defects, you rotate to a better side. That's as much good quality 8/4 as I'm going to get off of this, so now I go back to sawing 4/4. I have more use for low grade 4/4 than I do low grade 8/4. There is a stop for the head at its lowest setting, and the sawdust can accumulate there and prevent the head from coming down quite all the way, so I blow it out to make sure that I get an accurate cut. The clamps on the sawmill will not fasten or tighten securely on a 1-inch board. I can do multiple boards, and I do that occasionally, and the clamps will hold it fine. But for 1-inch, I put a 4x4 in place just to give a little bit of spacing to tighten the clamps up a little bit. I like to get as much yield as I can out of each board, and I find that this is the best way. If I have multiple boards that are about the same height, need the same amount taken off, I will speed things up a little bit and put multiples on there depending on how many I have. One of the other nice features of this sawmill is that all of the hydraulic controls, bed controls, clamps, log lift, all of that, you can swing that. It's on a swing arm, and you can bring it in tight enough so that you can actually hold a board or move a board or whatever and clamp it while you're holding it. So if you run a mill by yourself, as I do often, it comes in very handy.